Well, since recording in progress, we can start the session now. We will have two sessions. After this, 1.5 hour session. Then we have a break, a coffee break. Then we come back again. The first session will be a little bit of presentation, and if we have time, we will talk. Then the second session, we will fully talk and find a way to move forward, how we can work together and get this thing really moving. In anything, in terms of if you would like to get funding to do so, how we can work together to get funding. If you have some problem like in Sri Lanka, you can tell that what is the problem in Sri Lanka. Kasu Sang is here. He would like to help a lot with the Sri Lankan government. So that would be excellent. And whatever, like for Nepal, for Indonesia is always has a problem. Now a lot of smoke in Jakarta. Israel sent me a message that, oh, this is a lot of smoke in Jakarta now. Okay, I don't know. Just a problem, just the beginning. But the air quality is getting bad. Yeah. And yeah, in Jakarta now. So welcome, Marcus. Then we will try to do that in the second session. So for the beginning, first of all, my name is Virachai Tanpipat from Thailand. I'm from HII, Hydroinformatics Institute, and we all say that in Thailand, when we come to APAN, we have Thailand. So we do have Thailand, but not really Ren. But we agree that the different agencies come together, and when we come outside like this, we call ourselves Thailand to avoid the confusion, like NECTEC, Uninet, HII, so many, like when they come. So we call ourselves Thailand, like some professor from a university, we ask them to do that, so it's easier. So just recap from last time in Nepal. Russia is here. He took care of everything for that. Excellent organizer. Very good, very excellent. So we had 5 speakers and very minimum attendance. Now I think we have more, which is very good. And those are the speaker. Kasu is here. Onami-san, not maybe he's online already. I don't know, but give a talk. And then the research software engineer company from India, I think, gave a talk. Bogal, I don't know. These are the name. I didn't put it down. And the professor Miho Raval, or is it correct, the name pronunciation? And then Dr. I from UNESCO, which he will give a talk again today because of the open science of UNESCO. I heard that not many people know that UNESCO doing the open science. And of course, Marcus, and he will also give a lot of idea today because we discussed yesterday that the mindset of the people in terms of open and sharing data is not that open yet, and it's quite. We'll wait for Marcus to give it a talk about that then, because I don't want to go into the detail too much. And the second session, we have the 4 speakers, also the same number of attending. And then we get a talk. This organized by, I don't know, NREN people around the world. So the representative of this region give a talk, update what's going on. This time I asked Irina, but no reply, so it's fine. We just probably try to get the update from them in the next APAN, if possible, that they can update us what's going on. And I had attend 2 meetings. One in the Wireless World Research Forum, but from that, not much, because they talk about 6G. how to use 6G, and they try to get the application, but still, we still far from 6G. I think 5G is okay, but 6G they try to discuss when we have 6G, what can we do? And the next meeting is the annual meeting of APAN, which is Dr. I will give more detail about that. Okay. So nothing much, but for APAN, the representative is from the representative of the government, like Mahisha. That's why I met her there and in Jakarta, and learned that all the ministry of different country they have open science program. So she will probably give a little bit of the information about that in Sri Lanka when you have a chance. Second session, you need to tell us more. Okay. Then that's it. The opening, and then I think the first speaker for the session is Dr. I. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chai. So let me share my screen. Oops. Sorry, is this up? Voilà. Can you see it okay? Okay, then, thank you so much. Yes, okay, great. Thank you so much then for the introduction and for letting us participate to your working group so far. So I would like to give very brief update on what has happened since last time that we all met. And then the direction that we are also looking at, and we would like to raise collaboration with you, with this group as well on it. So first of all, maybe yes. So I would just give you then a bit of update, but maybe since last time we went, there might not have been any meetings. But anyway, on the UNESCO Open Science Recommendation Implementation Strategy, and then the regional activities that we're having in the region and what we plan next. So I don't think I need, each time I'm telling you about this recommendation that had been approved in 2021, and for which then we are defining open science, and then on a broader scale than just open data, and we really need to work very hard so that people do not just stop on open data when we talk about open science. So it's really the effort that we're putting in for that, and we know that this group on being more infrastructure and so on would have this common understanding with us. And so open science infrastructure is one of the pillars of this open science recommendation, and to implement it at the global level and run by the Secretariat in our headquarters in Paris, UNESCO Secretariat. We have 5 working groups who are meeting regularly and discussing then how we do implement what is written in that recommendation. And then so on the 5 working groups in the region, we are kind of focusing on 2, especially on one on the open science capacity building, and the other one on infrastructure, and which is then more like supporting developing open science platforms for sharing knowledge and best practices, and around then the UNESCO field of competencies. And so I would like to just briefly say what the Open Science Infrastructure group has been doing. So there were 3 global meetings, and the last one took place in March. And so it's this group is focusing then on the thematic of platforms around then, as I said, the areas of competence of UNESCO science program, so which include biodiversity, water, disaster risk reduction, geosciences, ocean science, and everything then related to climate change. And then, so this working group objective is to create then a checklist, a guide for open science infrastructures in line with our recommendation, and then to build a kind of index of open science infrastructure to support then the knowledge sharing information on the science priority areas on which we are working. And so there are 5 key factors that are considered now while developing, funding, and using this open science infrastructure. First being on the transparency of cost and benefits. The second one on interoperability to enhance reuse. Third one, community-based infrastructure development. Fourth one on sharing, paying attention on existing infrastructure rather than having a necessary duplication. And then the last one on harmonizing effort by enabling environment with community standards. So they are like, all those are compiled into toolkits that you can find. And then here, so we have very specific messages highlighted, especially like on share what would be the shared attention and the benefits on then sharing the open science infrastructure. And then also on interoperability to enhance the reuse of what are the existing resources and data. But then we still have key questions that we need to address. So one of them being, what would be then an open science platform for sharing of knowledge and best practices, and what are the gaps we have in open science infrastructure at the global level, but also in our region, and what are the barriers so far to the interoperability of those infrastructures. So research resources, not just the data, right? The resources, the models, all these things as well. And then what are the challenges and the opportunities for cross-border multi-stakeholder collaboration? And then what approach, how we could be defining efficient and effective funding approach for maintaining then all these open science infrastructures. And we know that you are the NREN's one of the key partners on this area. So again, like the toolkit. So if you want to see a little bit more in detail, then we have them here, so you can access. Then what specifically we're doing in the region. So as Professor Chai has introduced, so UNESCO has a network which is called the Science, Engineering, Technology, Innovation Policy Agenda Pacific Network, APAN. And UNESCO is the secretariat, and then the members are have been nominated through what we call the UNESCO National Commissions, which are entities within the government of each of our member states. So can be in Ministry of Education, can be Ministry of Foreign Affairs, can be Ministry of Culture, it depends on the country. But then so we had someone within the government then appointed to represent the member states and to share then within this network the any like a science, engineering, technology, innovation related activities. So we have I have already presented that, but then so within Stepan, so we have 3 major trusts, and Dr. Mahesha in the room then is the vice chair of the second one, which is more on SDG technologies. But then the first one is on science, engineering, technology, innovation, governance. And in that one, then we are focusing on open science implementation. And so this is the slide from our vice chair, Dr. Jungjing from STEPI for this trust. So in a nutshell, what we have done since the re-establishment of this network. So in 2020, we have conducted actually first a survey but it was more on open data, open access, but introducing was before the recommendation was adopted. But then so on what was the understanding and feeling about open science in our region. And then we have also conducted a survey and a study, a mapping, actually, a local mapping on 5 countries in each of the sub-regions that are covering our Asia and the Pacific. So Southeast Asia, East Asia, South Asia, the Pacific, and Central Asia. And we have a paper which is compiling all the results, and then where we have then on the conclusion being that we have a lot of disparities and well, yes, a lot of disparities within our different sub-regions, and then of course linked to also the disparities in access to digital infrastructures, but also we have disparities in understanding and what is available in terms of institutional framework and capacity building. And so we've been working since that then with a focus more on infrastructure, because in this region we have the opportunity to work with you and with other groups like SOI Asia, and who are more like infrastructure people. So we have also a series of capacity building training, and this I thought then that Dr. Aini would have been introducing that more. But well, anyhow, we have like through our partners, institution, and through what we call UNESCO family, so the category 2 centers, which are research centers, national research centers with a mandate to support then implementation of specific areas of UNESCO science, well, UNESCO program in general, and then here in science. And so if you want, then we have here the compilation of regional training that we had on open science mechanism for implementation, implementation mechanism, sorry, and for Asia and the Pacific. And so since 2022, we've been working, implementing with SOI Asia, and we have invited you, this group, and the discussion had started with Marcus on this project called Fostering and Enhancing the Sustainable Reference for Open Science Implementation in Asia and the Pacific. So yes, so this is we had, yes, this workshop last May, where we discussed more like what were then the possibilities or what was happening in the region in terms of open science actions, let's say, from different sectors. So what next? So within this project, we have conducted first a regional survey, and I really thank all the partners here who have answered it. So I presented it last time. So we have now the kind of work list on what would be the type of capacity building workshop that we could be doing, and so most are still on awareness raising and multi-stakeholder dialogue on bringing then all the actors to the same awareness level. And the second activity are like a series of regional workshops. So we had a few, so including the Malaysian training and training workshop and so on. And then so here we would like actually to mobilize you and in particular to know. So, you know, for infrastructure, for the open science infrastructure group, very often then the interoperability issue is comes, right? But then, so one of the suggestions from SOI Asia was actually if we could map or make an inventory of what are the resources actually that are that could be shared, and the resources that are available to the sharing, then maybe it would be easier then to define what would be the interoperability rather than just in general. So that's something that we would like to undertake in the region specifically, and yes, and so hopefully we can work on that together. We are still discussing as well, and still no clear definition on what would be then for Asia and the Pacific the open science platform. We have in our region we have a lot of platforms, so then what should be one, or how should we make sure that we're not duplicating anything, or how could we compile everything together, so these are still the discussion going on, and we don't really have a consensus about it, and we would be really happy to continue discussing on that. And then my colleagues from headquarters have been advancing that part, and then what would be then the indicators that we should be monitoring to see, to evaluate then how much progress we have been doing now on the implementation of the recommendation itself, but also on any other progress. And so we would organize a bit later, probably next year or probably next year. So a multi-stakeholder dialogue where we would like then to bring everyone again. So decision makers and technicians and different audience. So we have done it before, like I think in 2021. So just to see again then what had happened after 3 years and where we are after 3 years. And yes, and then now actually I have moved from a Jakarta office to Beijing office, and in Beijing the partners are a bit different, and then so we have as well a lot of engineering engineers with us. And so we would like to also see and explore what would be defining and implementing open engineering. And so in that, maybe just want to share a few other things. So, like UNESCO, we are famous. Probably the most successful program is the World Heritage Program. So everyone usually associate UNESCO to that. But we have other, what we call UNESCO designated sites, which are like territories with recognized for specific something. So I mean, like either for World Heritage, natural cultural heritage, for biosphere reserve on ecosystem and biodiversity conservation, on the geopark, also on geological heritage. And we have what we call also the eco-hydrology sites, which are also like a model of water and nature management, integrated management. But all those are like hubs of data and so on. And so we're discussing as well now what would be then the key action for open science and for open data for water scarcity. And so we are also discussing within this, like with more like the water engineers, then what would be then the things that we should be putting. And this should be, of course, all mainstream back into what we do for open science implementation itself. And so this is for biosphere reserve. So that's an example of one paper which is showing how the UNESCO biosphere reserve data in Europe are actually contributing into biodiversity monitoring within the European context and so on. So that's it for me. So I'm really, really happy to be back in this group and then to be discussing with you further on what we can be doing at the regional level on advancing together then this implementation of open science. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ai. Please, your approach. Anybody has any question for Dr. Ai? Suhaimi, do you have any question?
Not right now. I think it's all pretty much self-explanatory. Thank you, Chai.
Thank you. Welcome, Suhaimi. Anybody here have question? They have question with the open science of the UNESCO? Maybe it catch my eye a bit that I saw that one topic is AI ethics. What the purpose of that? Just want to know a bit.
Okay. So actually, it's not about our open science recommendation itself, but it's another major recommendation that we have in UNESCO and that has been also adopted at the same general conference in 2021. And it's about, establishing safeguarding this about AI and its application, but then the ethical aspect of AI. So so it's another recommendation that we are also implementing. And of course, with AI works with data, right? So we have to the two recommendations are closely related, and that's why we mention it when we also mention open science, because of those aspects. And so so it's this is a recommendation on ethical impact assessment, on stewardship, on data policy, and on development of international cooperation. So around all these ethical aspects of artificial intelligence. So I don't know if you want more details, but we have something that came up now. So what's data for AI? Open data for AI. It's a publication that just came up, and so it's also, of course, following the principles that we have also established within the open science recommendation. So emphasizing on the FAIR principles and so on. So that's in a nutshell what it is about.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We can, yes. Rajan, okay.
Yes, thank you, first of all, for your presentations. Yeah, actually, I got chances to participate with some programs organized by UNESCO Jakarta, I think a couple of years back, such as One Day in Asia and few other activities as well. So those activities were very important for all of the entrants, and there was assessments as well. So you already mentioned that things. Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you have any other concrete plan or regarding these open science and open data related activities focusing to South Asia?
Focusing on South Asia, well, we work regionally, so we also always invite then all the region to participate. So in which country in South Asia in particular are you referring to?
Yeah. Actually, maybe the context of Nepal and
Nepal,
other
okay.
countries, right?
Okay, noted. Yeah, so that will be through our New Delhi office. But yeah, so usually we do invite then all our field offices are aware of what we are doing and we're doing it together. So I could, if you want, I can put you in contact with our Delhi office as well. So you to make sure that you can
definitely.
Okay,
yeah,
so you
sure.
can then drop me an email afterwards. I can yes, you can just ask for it, or it's on the screen. No, it's not on the screen anymore, but anyhow, I can put it in on the chat, the Zoom chat. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyhow, otherwise, I should be in the program, so you should be able to find me. Thank you very much.
All right. Any further question? Yes. Please.
Hi, this is Shinji from Japan. Thank you very much for your talk. I missed first part of your talk, so it's maybe covered, but I think you said that World Heritage program, those accreditation program. I think that those are very good because you accredit some areas as a World Heritage. The local government or they are trying to preserve those heritage, So do you come up with the same thing with the data? Because I think there's some precious data in the worldwide, but they are, trying to get the funding. Sometimes, it's very hard to, get the funding for preserve the data. So do you have, something like that so that you can encourage to preserve the very precious data for the open science?
Thank you very much for your question. I think that's what we are eventually trying to achieve with the implementation of this recommendation. So because we so this recommendation is not just covering. I want to share one slide. So this oops, I want to make it full. So this recommendation has like a other than open scientific knowledge, so the data itself and everything, we are trying actually to also, we have two bits like open engagement of societal actors, so which is promoting citizen science and participatory science and so on, but also this one, open dialogue with other knowledge system, where we are also now trying to compile and to invite then knowledge systems that are not usually very referred to, or how do you say, it's like not the traditional, what we would call traditional fields within of science. And we are now with this recommendation trying as well and promoting then this inclusion of those knowledge. So I guess that would then lead to what you are saying. So all this knowledge plus data probably of what which are with the communities, indigenous and local communities, and so on, to then being also becoming available to anyone and being preserved in a way. I hope that's answers.
Yeah, that's great. So I think each country, maybe like Japan or US, had some science academy, and they are trying to map those kind of knowledge system in each country. So you compile them together. I think it's very good for accredit or for acknowledge the effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further question? Yes. Okay, from Korea now. Yes.
Okay. Thanks for your presentation. Yes, this is Pusungjo from KISTI, South Korea. KISTI, we make the MOU with UNESCO Heritage to supporting the software heritages and the open science. So I want to curious about your working for the software heritage. So do you explain a little bit detail about what's going to happen in software heritage in Asia or the areas?
Thank you very much. I just want to confirm, soft heritage, you mean intangible?
Yeah.
Intangible.
Software heritage.
Soft. So I guess it's the what we call the intangible heritage, right? And then is that correct?
It's
software. Okay.
Yeah, software heritage.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you, Irina. Okay. So no, I'm sorry. I'm not very aware of what is happening now. But yeah, so I can find out and come back to you if you drop me your email. Sorry for that. I will study that for next time. Yes.
Just what I know, the software heritage is a new activity of the UNESCO to archive the old software that is developed by the old humans. It means software is also heritage of the humans. So maybe the GitLab or the Microsoft and Amazon, all the big company was involved in that thing. So if this kind of thing is to happen in Asia areas, so it's very useful for the all developers or the all researchers. So that's what
Okay, great. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, we'll include that. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yes. Please. Another question.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Amarnath from Sri Lanka. What is your opinion of commitment among the health professional on data sharing? If it is a matter for concern, do you have any plans to improve it? Data sharing by the medical professionals related to the health data.
Okay. Well, I'm really not an expert on that, so I hope I won't say anything wrong. But yes, I think that the COVID period has shown us the value of sharing all those research data very quickly and like in a seamless way, right? And we have achieved really a very like record-breaking results through that. But then I think that with health data, we also need to come back, and it's I think one part that is taken with the AI part of the ethics part of recommendation, right? So on how we make sure that privacy and then all that type of things are also properly protected. But like in Jakarta in 2019, we had a first meeting on what would be then, and it was with Soy Asia, and I think we had no, maybe not APAN at that time, but anyhow, and we did actually invite for private sector the pharmaceutical how do you call it, the association, pharmaceutical association of Indonesia, and so they came, but they were really like, oh, we know we should be doing a lot of those things, but it's always very, so especially pharmaceutical industry, I think, because of all the budget it implies and so on, they were like very looking forward on how then this development would come. I'm really sorry, my answer is quite fluffy, but I think we with the open science recommendation that has been then adopted by member states, so they, even though a recommendation is not a constraining document, so it doesn't need to become a law within the country, within our member states, the member states have still taken so they engage themselves by reporting on what they are doing on that. So it's still one step ahead. And of course, the medical sector has to be within that, and is an important partner. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further question? Okay. If not, let us move on to another speaker. It's Elena. Then you stay with us, Dr. I, because the second session we have
yes, of course.
the second session we have a lot of discussion.
Okay.
So Elena, yes, you're on, please.
Good morning. I would like to share with you some recommendations on what could be done to improve data stewardship in the countries, and also suggest maybe some actions that could be taken on Asia Pacific level. And what I will be presenting is aimed for Europe. In Europe, we have European Open Science Cloud, where countries and institutions get together, and training and skills building is an important part of those discussions. And we came up with a list of 18 recommendations for data stewardship skills training and curricular, with implementation examples from European countries and institutions. And those recommendations are supposed to cover our needs in Europe, but like I said, I think they will also be useful for your institutions and for your thinking around building capacities on those topics. So a couple of definitions by data stewards. In these recommendations, we mean people who plan, manage, and also maintain data in research units or organizations, and they are really essential if we want to bring a culture change in data sharing. And unfortunately, now this kind of roles, data stewards, they're not really supported with proper curriculum and training. And we are trying to change that and come up with some actions. Our recommendations are divided into different categories. So the first category is what could be done on regional and national level to build competencies, training, and curricular. And we think it's important to harmonize this list of data stewardship competencies on the regional and on the national level, and then support implementation of this aligned one curricular that will be taught on the regional level. And institutions and countries really have to commit to that in the documents they create, such as open science and open data policies and strategies documents. Skills should be an important part of open data and open science policies. Then it's really important to mainstream this open science and open data skills and competencies in research data management programs, and this role of data stewards should really be recognized as a profession, and should be advanced through proper education. And what's important here is that this kind of education should be tailored to different research and innovation domains, for example, health, we've just discussed. And then accredited training programs should be provided. And there are still discussions who should be really accrediting these training programs. Are they part of usual educational programs, accreditation in universities, or will there be a European body that will be accrediting this kind of special programs? Then we need one curricular for data stewardship and for open science. And this curricula should be an important part of conversations on the governmental level as well, when we talk about skills, competencies. Then career paths are important. Those people who are trained appropriately, they should be able to build their career in this area. And suggestion is that data stewardship could be an alternative career path for junior researchers, because they already have this combination of high-level specialist domain knowledge, and they also have technical skills, and they could build their data stewardship skills, and early career researchers could actually become data stewards in institutions and fill in this gap within academia and also outside academia. Continuous learning is important because we know that data stewardship really changes fast, so there should be ways to continue learning. And it's also important that there is strong collaborations between services providing research data management support, service centers, and then data stewards at institutions. Another area of recommendations is around policies and networks. So we believe that it's important to strengthen networking in the area of fair, findable, accessible, interoperable data literacy, data science, data management professionals. So there is an intent to set up a network of data stewards in Europe. And what we are seeing in Europe that it's also important for university alliances. There are over 40 different European university alliances, and the good news is that for all of them, open science and data skills are important, and they include in skills and training in their strategic plans and in their activities, which also contributes to this kind of network building. Then we also believe that we can start something like national and European Open Science Cloud and training ambassador and leadership programs among decision makers, because this change should happen not only bottom up, but also top down. So there is an intention to offer this kind of leadership programs on the European level, and then of course coordinate European developments and national developments, and set up proper coordination bodies focusing on skills and training. Then funding is an important question, how data stewardship could be funded in Europe. And one idea is to allocate specific funding for data management and data stewardship within European and national research funding programs. So every research funding program would include a certain percentage of cost that would go to data management, data stewardship, and then those costs could also be used to build skills and training capacities. And of course, Europe and governments could also fund specific training schemes for data stewardship. We also have a set of recommendations for universities and research performing institutions, what they could do to advance research data management skills and training. And those recommendations also are around curricular and career paths for data stewards. So universities should really commit to educating data stewards, and they should support this continuous training programs. And we suggest so-called dynamic curricular, because that's a type of training programs that could be developed through mentorship programs and collaboration between different organizations. So there could be specific workshops fostering this networking and connections within university and also beyond university. And that would help to have this domain-specific embedded data stewards in European institutions. Then, of course, develop curricular and career paths for data stewards, because they should be trained at universities and they should have a career path in universities. And if data stewards are early career researchers, then they already have domain knowledge, and they really need training on so-called soft skills and technical skills. And soft skills are communication, team management, collaborations, and soft and technical training could be embedded in research programs and other workflows. Maybe that's an area where experimentation with innovative teaching pedagogies could happen. And here we'll probably need a combination of online and blended learning, and current data stewardship courses that are taught in European universities are taught like that. Students meet in the beginning of the course, then the rest of learning happens online, and they collaborate remotely. Languages are also very important, that this kind of data stewardship training should be happening not only in English language, but also in national languages. And then partnerships, of course, are important at the institutional level as well. These are some of the competencies that could be included in data stewardship curriculum. For example, IT competencies, how to model data, how to deal with data management, data collection, cleaning, storing, infrastructure for that, open science and machine learning. Then legal and ethical competencies are important, as I mentioned already. In Europe, we have general data protection regulation, so everything around data privacy, data security, findable, accessible, interoperable data, ethics in AI that we've just discussed, cybersecurity. Then disciplinary specific data competencies, knowledge about data descriptions or metadata in specific domains, knowledge of data practices in domains in social sciences or in health sciences or biosciences or law, arts, humanities. And maybe here disciplinary courses could help addressing this need. And then skills on research data management and open science, including fair data in research lifecycle. And here, hands-on training could help to build this kind of skills and competencies. And maybe that's where in projects, in research projects, this could happen as work-in practice. Then for institutions, for universities, it's also important to be part of data stewardship communities and network. And the idea is that there will be national data stewardship networks and also European collaboration of those national networks. And universities should be part of that. And then universities could focus on domain-specific support, offer some kind of peer-to-peer learning, make sure that data stewards have a structured onboarding process, and then train-the-trainer programs could help to advance these initiatives. And maybe train-the-trainer programs could also be included in the activities of our working group. We can discuss that in the second part. And then technical infrastructure is important so that data stewards could really practice what they learn and what they preach. And here, collaborations and cross-facility discussions are really important. We're basing these recommendations on current developments in European countries and in European institutions. And what you see on this slide is a snapshot of discussions in the Netherlands, because Netherlands was one of the first countries that really produced a report highlighting what kind of skills and competencies should data stewards have, and how universities could support this kind of skills and training. And they just had a workshop to look back, because that report was released 3 years ago. So they looked what happened in the past 3 years and what is important to do on the national level. And you see job formalization. So data stewardship should really be a job a person receives. And then in universities, this data stewards should be easy to find by researchers. Capacity building is important. It's important to have certified education and training, and job profiles and career perspectives are important. Another example is from Australia. They had a collaborative project. They're not part of our working group. They were not part of recommendations, but I think it's important to show this example in this context when we talk about universities. Here, 25 universities in Australia got together, and they came up with a strategy how research data management could be implemented across Australian universities. And they developed a research data management framework that includes elements for immediate focus, such as active research data management, and they provide suggestions how to build this active research data management in institutional structures. Culture change, policy, planning, addressing issues of research data retention and disposal, open research and data publication, dealing with sensitive research data, support training, guidance, and research data appraisal. And then they also have other important elements for research data management, such as addressing data sharing and access, cybersecurity, data ownership, digital preservation, we just discussed, funding and sustainability, governance, identifiers for data and metadata, how to deal with non-digital material, standards, guidelines, and indigenous data management. And this framework is available, and I really encourage you to have a look at it if you're interested. Back to Europe, what we want to do in our task force on data stewardship, career paths, and curricular skills and competencies. We want to create a registry of available data stewardship courses. We'll probably start with Europe, but we'll also include other courses if we see relevant. And this could be a collaborative activity that will happen in the coming months. On the international level, Research Data Alliance has an interest group which is called Professionalizing Data Stewardship. And if you're interested in this topic, please join. It's an open group, open management, open membership. Well, discussions, similar discussions are also happening on international level. And then luckily in Europe, we have a funded project, Skills for European Open Science Cloud, that is addressing a number of actions that are identified in our recommendations. And for research infrastructure, there is another project which is called Retrain Plus, Research Infrastructure Training. And this one specifically focuses on managers of research infrastructures and offer a set of open courses for anyone interested in the topics that you see on the screen. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have some.
Thank you very much. Any question? Around approach, please, to her. You have question? Okay, please.
Thank you, Rihanna. I'm Manuja Karnanda from National Science Foundation, and it's very impressive presentation. And also it is very useful for the country, as National Science Foundation is willing to collaborate with you to get this research data management practices to be implemented in Sri Lanka, especially to training on the research data stewardship program to implement in Sri Lankan university librarian and research librarians, because we still practices our traditional library systems and policies rather than handling proper and technical way of handling research data, so that this exposure and technical background is essential for our country, I think. So we would like to get you in touch and see the opportunities, how we can get best use of your services and get the benefit to our country as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manuja. Maybe one idea for librarians, if there are librarians in the room, in some countries we supported a network of librarians who would like to learn together on research data management, because it's a new topic for everyone, and if you learn together, it's faster, it's more efficient. So we start with a 3-day training program where a group of librarians get together and they are trained on at least basic research data management related topics, and then they go back to their institutions. They identify specific needs or specific gaps in the knowledge that they have, and then they get together for online or in-person meetings on the regular basis to build on the knowledge where they have gaps. And it's an active network that started offering some advice to the extent possible in the institutions, and also learning together current best practices. Yeah, it would be great to collaborate with you on that. Thank you.
For instance, like if we want to initiate the program with you, what is the first we have to do? Whether we have to formulate a program we have already 125 librarian network in Sri Lanka. We are the coordinating point to facilitate for data handling and research data management in Sri Lanka. So that what is the best way we can start up as a startup point to have a program with you?
Maybe start with a smaller group, because 120, I think, is a large group to train. So maybe select 20 librarians who are the most motivated and have some knowledge, and then we can start with training 20 librarians, and then train them as trainers, and then they can go back and train other people in their libraries or in their networks. Well, I'm just saying 20 because that's a number that we've been dealing with in other countries. It could be also 40. Just you, I think you are the ones who would be able to decide better what would be the best and the most efficient way to start.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will drop you an email and send your instruction to, if need to make a small proposal to train a small group first, then we can expand it with the training of trainer program through the other universities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further question? We can talk more in the second session. That's what the purpose on the second session. Any further question from the online? Anything? No. Then I have a last question. Are you still in Ukraine?
Yes, yes, I am.
So how is today? Do you have to go to
Beautiful.
the bunker today? Not yet.
No, not yet.
Wow,
It's
you're
a
very
beautiful
brave.
sunset
Still
when we
stay there.
started.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, you can move to the next speaker, and then we have more discussion later. We hear from Beijing office. We hear from Europe, Ukraine, from in the middle of the war, and now we're gonna hear from Australia. So we cover almost everywhere. So please, Marcus, it's your turn. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Can I get rid of that little window, or is it? Oh, that's the sharing thing back again. Okay. So thank you all for coming to this. I do want to stress that I keep getting labeled as the former APAN general manager, and I'm really hoping at some stage soon everyone's going to say it's Liana as the general manager, and I'm just Marcus. Okay. My background for this particular context is that in Australia over the last 20 years, we've gone through a massive culture change in research data management. And I was lucky enough to be involved in many of these programs and wrote some of the early papers, one of which Arena alluded to, which has now become the Australian Research Data Commons. We wrote a paper back in 2006 called Towards the Australian Research Data Commons. It's taken us 15 years. Just keep that in mind. Fortunately, we've learned a lot. What I want to focus on here is not so much on Australia specifically, but the approach we took to drive change. And it's not about the technology. It's not about the platforms. It's all about you. It's about the people. So where we're starting from is this enthusiasm. A lot of people are willing and keen to share data. But there is a much, much larger community out there that are not. They're not ready. They need help. And so one of the things we've talked about in this group in smaller meetings is, well, we're talking to ourselves and we're all enthusiastic, but what do we do when we go home? How do we help each other? So we talked about a vision. We talked about, well, what's the equivalent of the Australian Research Data Commons? We talked about an Asia Pacific, open, maybe research specific data commons. And one of the things we talked about there were these three pillars, these three key things: the infrastructure, the workforce, and the culture. Now, those things were chosen carefully because one actually builds on top of the other. The infrastructure, you build once you've got people ready to use it, once you've got people able to use it. Yep. No, just nothing, just so I mean. You send me and then am I sharing the presentation or? Yeah. So the Zoom audience is seeing the presentation, is that right?
We just want to see.
Oh, to share the slides after. Yeah, of course. Yeah. We'll put that on the website. That's for sure. So the thing with the infrastructure is it's kind of the last step. Building the storage infrastructure, building the platforms, building the services. You can't do that until you've got the people to run it. You need the workforce. What's the workforce going to do? Where do they come from? What skills do they need? As Arena just mentioned about data stewardship, there's a whole range of functions that we need to understand so that we can get the infrastructure to work and work effectively for the research community. So we can't do that first. The first thing we have to do is the culture. You okay there?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, okay, good. So the yeah, okay, all right.
I'm getting ChatGPT to translate it for me. So the focus is on the culture. The focus is on getting communities to understand, all of the key players to understand the values of this, the benefits of this, the costs of this, and so on. So we have to kind of start from the culture. Culture change is hard. So we've got these wonderful comments. Whoops. I won't touch that again. We've got these comments from the OECD, from UNESCO, from the International Council of Scientific Unions, the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, all saying sharing data is really, really valuable. They're all ready. They're all keen. They're all excited to go. These comments are nearly 20 years old. We still haven't solved this yet. We're still working on it. What's the problem? It's getting the culture to change. So Australia today, Marina highlighted some of the work that's happening now under ARDC. We've gone through many, many acronyms. If you ever want a history of that, that's a whole presentation. What we have now in Australia is we have a federation of repositories for every discipline. If you're a researcher in any discipline in Australia, there is a service for your data. It may be a very simple storage service. It may be a relatively smart, indexable, searchable repository. It may be a really rich search engine interface that allows you to combine multiple data sets from multiple locations, multiple disciplines, allocated by particular regions, time, whatever, across any discipline. And we have the people to support that. And there are now probably over 100 petabytes of data storage services around Australia. We have other infrastructure that you also need. You need identity and access management. You need security. You need control. You need the networks. For particular reasons, and predominantly about culture, we need to identify things. We need to identify researchers, because researchers need some credit and they need some, visibility of what they do. We need to identify the collections, the resources as assets, as something you can cite, something you can point to, something you can get credit for. We need networks. We need computing. We need high performance computing, high throughput computing. We need cloud computing services. All of that infrastructure is great. But how do we get people to use it? They want to have the data managed there. Many of our disciplines in Australia now have agreed on standards, metadata standards, data format standards that allow the data to be stored properly, to be preserved, that comes with proper provenance information, that comes with usability information. We did one project with the geoscience community where every single state in Australia was managing their own repository, and they all thought they were using the same standards. And we actually combined all of the data sets into a national view and discovered that 2 of our states were 200 meters apart in different directions. Nobody ever noticed that on the ground, that, the beach suddenly goes 200 meters that way. And it turned out it was just a mistake in the data, right? And they didn't see it until they started to combine all these different data sets. We have all of these standards driven by the disciplines themselves. They sat down and said, oh, if we're going to share data, we need to have metadata standards. We need to have data file format standards. We need to have file formats that are preservable and reusable long-term. If you have any Acrobat documents from Acrobat version 1, you probably can't read them anymore. If you have a Word document from the 1990s, you can probably still read it. But keep in mind, file formats change. That's a problem we have to take care of. Really importantly, our government is right behind this. That we have a public policy and a funding framework that says, if you have public funding for data, you must make the data publicly available. Lots of caveats, lots of constraints, lots of reasons why you may not share the data. Sensitivity, privacy, ethics, healthcare data, things like that obviously still play into this. But if you apply for a grant to collect data in Australia for research, you have to share the data, or you have to explain in your grant application why you're not going to share the data. And if you don't share the data and you say you would, you're going to have a hard time getting your next grant. So we have a framework, a little bit of a carrot and a stick approach there. Getting that one sentence to occur took many, many years of discussions. Institutions play a key role. Institutions hire the researchers, right? They have responsibilities. We can now say in Australia, every university has a senior person whose job it is to deal with research data. All right, that is really transformative. They might be sitting in the DVC's executive office. They might be sitting in the IT department or in the library or somewhere else. There might be a junior person new to it, but it is somebody's job. That's a really important thing. And we have people with skills. We have research data managers, data librarians, data scientists, we have trainers, we have this research software engineers, which I mentioned before. RSE is actually a community of software engineers. These are the people that write software for researchers to use. I did a survey about 4 years ago, probably the world's first survey of what we call the e-research community workforce. And it surprised everybody, the numbers that came out. I actually had to quickly look it up after Arena mentioned it. We had close to 6,000 people in Australia working in this space across all of the different areas, IT infrastructure, computing, data storage, and so on. So I pulled out the numbers individually. So keep in mind, Australia is about 27 million people. So about the same scale as Nepal, Sri Lanka, similar countries. We have a lot of space, but we don't have a lot of people. There's about 1,500 people responsible for collecting data. This is as their job, not as a researcher. This is people who are working for a researcher to help them collect data. We have around 1,100 people involved in management and stewardship of data. Sadly, we don't accredit them and train them the way we should, but we're getting there. And we have about 500 people working on training and advice, training the next generation of data stewards or training researchers, providing advice to researchers on how to collect their data. So we've got this really great environment now for research data in Australia. The survey, workforce survey, it's messy. I'll send you a copy. It was very, very hard work. Yep. So how do we get there? So we had, I don't know who can control that little window, if they can make it go away.
Just have to. It's lock in. That's why I have to use that.
Okay. That doesn't matter. It's only one word there. Okay, if you can fix that. So what we had, excuse me, in Australia in 2007 was we had all these different funding programs around research infrastructure. They were things that you could use to get a microscope or a telescope or a supercomputer or a data storage facility and so on. And in 2007, the government said, let's restructure all of this. And they came up with a really clever program called NCRIS, the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. And it said, let's take all of those existing funding streams. It's not new money, but we're going to spend it more wisely. So they picked 15 major research priorities, disciplines, and said, okay, we need to deal with capital expenses and operating expenses. We need to deal with one-off grants versus recurrent funding. We need to have an approach when we build infrastructure that is world-class, that it's sustainable, that there's a governance model behind it, that the community will invest in it. That includes the institutions. And then they said, okay, each one of those disciplines has their own particular technical needs. They need microscopes or particle accelerators or telescopes or genetic sequences and whatever. Oh, and they all need IT. Every single one of them needs IT. So they said, okay, there's a 16th capability, as they described it, that was focused purely on ICT. We call it e-research in Australia. And that included high-performance computing, it included network connectivity, identity and access management, collaboration tools, and then a very broad brush data service. So we set up the Australian National Data Service. Now, we had a slight... Yeah. What have you done to me, Joe? Hang on. There we go. We're good. Back again. So when we talked about the data program, we had a couple of little problems. We had no particular direction, no particular ideas, because it was kind of new. We didn't get given enough money. You know, we needed many tens of millions of dollars to do everything for the country. We got a tiny, tiny amount. It was a few $1 million a year for a small number of years. And we didn't know who could be involved. We weren't given any kind of scope by the government as to what kinds of communities we should talk to. So we said, hang on a minute, this is opportunity. Australia was doing this in 2007. There were very few examples around the world at that stage of doing research data management at scale. So we said, okay, it's a greenfield. It's an opportunity to design something. We'd seen small examples, you know, the Digital Curation Centre in the UK, for example. And some of the linguistics archives gave us some examples. We said, that's cool. We said, okay, we don't have enough money. Well, if we don't have enough money, we're not going to waste it on infrastructure. There's no point spending huge amounts of money on storage facilities, high-speed networks and all that sort of stuff. We've got other pots of money for that anyway. Doing it at scale for the many petabytes of data we knew was already out there, we said, we can't afford that. Okay, let's not do that. We said we won't spend it on a workforce either, because we don't know what we want them to do. We don't know what skills we need yet. We don't know how to bring people together, and what we're going to get these people to do to run infrastructure, to provide services, to provide training and advice and so on. How do we do all that? We don't know. We need to measure this first. So we made the really important decision that our first investment was on culture change. We said, what we're going to do is we're going to make people aware of how important this is and how difficult it is and how expensive it is and what the benefits are of doing this. It takes a long time. It takes a long time. You're trying to build momentum in a community. It's like changing the direction of one of those big, container ships you see out in the harbor. You got to put a little bit of force for a long period of time, and eventually things shift. Now, you guys have got the benefit of us having struggled to do this for the best part of 15 years. You can do it 10 times faster, I'm sure. Doesn't cost a lot of money either. And it is foundational. You'll notice again, infrastructure, workforce, culture. And when we said, who do we involve? Let's involve everybody. Let's find out who cares, who has skills, who has responsibilities. Let's try and map out this space. So we went to the community and said, okay, who do we need to talk to? Well, obviously we need to talk to researchers, right? They care about their data. They want to do things with the data. They have particular issues. We went and talked to the government. We talked to the funding bodies and the policy makers. And sometimes in some communities, it's all one body. In other countries, it's multiple slightly different bodies. So the conversation needs to be a little bit adjusted, but that's okay. We talked to institutions. We talked to universities, other research centers, the cultural institutions, the GLAM sector, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. We said, what do you do? What are you trying to do? What have you got? What have you got to share? Would you be interested in sharing? What stops you from sharing, and so on? So we said, we need all of these people around the table. And so we spent a lot of time bringing people together and doing a lot of talking. Do they care about research data management? Well, researchers don't. They're scared, right? They have a lot of fears. And I'll talk about some of those fears in a moment. So researchers, in general, if you talk to them about sharing data and making it accessible, no. Does the government care? No. They don't come up with the idea of going, oh, it's really important to share data. They don't understand it yet, right? When we first talked about this, they said, you want to spend money on research data? Isn't that like a trivial problem? Don't you just go to the local office workshop and buy a little hard disk and store your data on that and then plug it in on the internet somewhere? Isn't it all easy? No, we have to explain it to them. Do the funders care? Well, sometimes they do, kind of, but they don't have the money yet, mostly because the government doesn't yet understand the issues and benefits. Do the institutions care? Definitely not. It's like, oh, it's not our job. We hired Chai and he suddenly turns up and generates a few petabytes of data. Well, that's Chai's problem, not the institution's problem. He can go apply for another grant to make his data available. Yeah, okay, we need to fix this. So we did a survey back in 2008. Behind my video title there is a title for it. It's the preservation and sustainability of research data. Myself and Paul went out and we interviewed 60, 70 research groups around Australia and said to them, so what do you do? How do you collect your data? What do you do with your data? What are the problems with your data? How do you share it? Do you share it? Why don't you share it? What are the problems there? And so we wrote a report. You can still find it online somewhere if you Google really hard. And there were the seven deadly fears we came across. The biggest one, I've spent 20 years collecting all this data for my research. I've written 100 papers based on that data. There might be more cool things in the data. I don't want somebody else to publish it first. All right? I want to keep the data to myself. It's an asset for their own research career. There was an interesting flip side to that. A couple of research groups said, actually, we're a bit worried that the data is not that great, and we've written all these papers, and we suddenly share our data, and we make it visible, and then along comes some little young PhD student and says, oh, you made a mistake in your data. How embarrassing would that be, right? So there were people who didn't want to share for that reason. They feared the unknown custodians or the unknown stewards. The number of PhD students in Australia who were working as a data steward for their supervisor rather than working on their PhD was enormous. I used to be one of them. So I know exactly where that came from, right? So they don't trust somebody else to take care of their data. They fear the inappropriate leaks, and they feared that in different ways, depending on who they were. So you mentioned, I think somebody asked about the healthcare data, right? The privacy and ethics concerns of data being made accessible, shareable in an overly free way is too high a bar. In some cases, people said, yeah, I can share it, but only with a very named set of people. So that had to be dealt with. There's some data sets that have, and you can imagine in genomic data sets, in pharmaceutical data sets and so on, there are billion-dollar patents potentially hidden in the data. And so people are a bit nervous to share in case somebody else goes, oh, hey, check this out. I've just found a cure for cancer. Oops. And the other one was about the relationship to data providers. We had researchers who were interviewing sensitive communities. There was one group working with drug users. These are people who self-identified as being, addicted to certain drugs. They want to understand how to help them, so they were interviewed by the researchers. If that information was leaked, no drug user would ever talk to that group again. Similarly, we had another group working in ecology in the fisheries industry. They were talking to fishermen saying, so where do you go? What's your favorite spot to catch fish? How many fish do you catch there? For a fisherman, that is their livelihood. That is their trade. And if that data leaks outside of the research project, they will never talk to a researcher again. So again, that sensitivity, you have to be very careful of them. They fear the cost. It takes time to change the way you collect your data, to manage your data and do it properly. Now, obviously we can fix that. We can fix all of these. But to do it at the time was like, you want me to spend another month taking care of my data to make it shareable? Who's going to pay for that? I want to keep doing my research. If the data ends up under the desk somewhere, I don't care. They fear the lack of recognition. They make the effort, they put the data out there, other people get to publish about the data, and the person who collected the data and made it accessible gets no credit for it. Academics live and die by publication counts. That's all. So until we could actually cite the existence of a collection as a publication and the effort used to made to collect information, researchers weren't that keen on it. We had several large projects. One of the classic ones was a linguistics archive that was digitizing very old recordings going back 50 to 100 years. They did a huge amount of work. They've generated a data set that is now globally used and highly cited. At the time, they could not write a publication because the linguistics journal said, oh, this is a computer science article. The computer science people said, no, this is a linguistics article. So they could never publish anything about the work they'd done. They couldn't get any credit for the effort they put into making the data accessible. To do that, we had to be able to cite data. And the other interesting thing, one is kind of a back to front one, which is, why would I share my data so that somebody else would use it? Because if I was in their position, I wouldn't trust their data. I don't know how they collected their data. I don't know how they, what the provenance of the data is and so on. So why would I share if what I get from them is not trustworthy? So there's this kind of trade-off here. As I said, this was done back in 2008. Nothing has changed in the research community, except we now have answers to all of them. How do we change the culture? So there's a lovely saying that we had a lot in those days: practice eats policy for breakfast. What it basically says is, I don't care how many policies you've got, what actually happens on the researcher's desk inside a university is what happens. You might have a great policy that says you must share the data and so on. If it doesn't have the structure behind it, the practice will win. Policies just disappear in the mist. It needs to be really concrete and specific. So what we need to do is we need to change the culture. We need to provide a value proposition, if you want to go into marketing terms, and we need to take care of those fears. We need to talk to all of the different audiences in their own language, in their own way, to make them convinced, that they're all working together for a particular point. Yes, there are hundreds of issues. Think about costs and funding and sustainability and training and skills, all that stuff. Yes, they're all there. We have answers for them. It takes time. So what do? We went and talked to the government and the funding body, and we said to them, what do you know about research data management? They said nothing. It's like, well, okay, what do we What are the problems here? What are we trying to solve? So did you know that in Australia, we funded researchers to collect the same data over and over and over? We spent the same dollars, spent new dollars to collect the same data. Why are we doing that? We're wasting money. We're also losing data that was collected once that we can't get back. Most sciences, I'm an astronomer by training a long time ago. You only get one shot at an observation, and then you've missed your chance to ever collect the data. If that data is lost, that's it. You can't get it back. That comes up in many disciplines, in disasters. It comes up in hydrology, ecology, environmental data, and so on. All of these things, you have a one-shot chance of collecting the data, and you lose it. It's an asset. And increasingly what we're seeing is questions about the quality of research. A lot of publications are based on data, and if you can't analyze the data the same way the researcher did, how do you verify it? How do you trust the publication? How do you trust the research activities? You might have seen the recent discussion about LK99, the potential room temperature superconductor. Turns out the publication came out very early, and it wasn't a great publication, and there wasn't enough data to verify it. And a lot of people are struggling to replicate the results. So there are some good arguments here. And these are the kinds of arguments you want to make to the government. All right, researchers don't kind of really care about this, but governments really care, because it's like, oh, hang on a minute, we can solve some problems here. They can also set some requirements. We can talk about the national good, things that we collect for the cultural heritage of the nation. They say, oh, we want to fund something that we can use to capture our Indigenous populations or to capture our history and so on. A really strong point is the input to policy one. A lot of governments these days talk about, we want evidence-based policies. We need the data for that. Who collects the data? Governments are not very good at collecting huge amounts of data and analysing it and interpreting it and so on. And as it turns out in Australia, we have the very large Australian Bureau of Statistics. They collect major data sets through the census and so on. Researchers keep finding mistakes in the data, and they give it back. They fix it for the government. There are environmental policies that require a lot of data. Healthcare, education, national security, all of them need data, and all of them need people with skills to interpret the data. So researchers can help with policy development. And then building reference materials for the nation. So again, that comes under cultural heritage types things. So building all those things together, there's a message here to the government to say, hey, opportunities, costs, benefits. You just need to think about it carefully. Oh, okay. Are people okay if I just keep going? I'll try and go a bit faster. Yeah, great. All right, so what we're going to try and do is, once you've got them interested, you need to think about the way they're going to come back with, okay, we want to support this, but isn't it expensive? And you say to them, well, actually, not really. You can do things in a very scalable, cost-effective way if you get the right people to do the right things in the right places. Don't get a researcher and give them a grant to build a storage facility. There's no point. Researchers are not good at storing data and managing it. Build some repositories, build some institutional frameworks to support that. You want to scale the costs on those things that are common: storage, spinning disk, network access, identity federations, and so on, and then let the community, the discipline, work out what the tools are, what the software is, what the standards are, and so on, because they're the ones that really, really, really care about this. And we can talk about sustainability and various things. The return on investment is huge. That's a useful thing to talk to the government about. It takes a few years, but we get there. For institutions, it's kind of their job to be involved. They try and deny it. I've had a lot of conversations with vice chancellors about, hey, did you know that you actually own the data? Every researcher that is employed by a university signs a contract. And data they collect actually kind of technically, in most cases, belongs to the university, not to the researcher. Institutions don't want to know that, and researchers don't want to know that, but legally they are obliged. The other thing is they also see a lot of the grant applications. So they see the opportunities of managing the data more effectively. And some universities in Australia now are proud of the fact that they have many, many petabytes of data in a certain discipline and are sort of a national leader in that discipline and the data collected by that. So you can work with the institutions. The other thing is, I talk about talking to an institution. You don't talk to an institution, you talk to a person, right? Who do you talk to? Well, if you talk to the IT department, you'll get one message. If you talk to the libraries, you get a different message. And librarians are very powerful people. And they're very smart people, and they understand data management way more than you'd give them credit for. The e-research conference in Australia has about 700 people attending it each year. Probably a third of them are librarians. Yeah, quarter to a third. Right, so it shows you they are really, really active and really interested in this. Research officers, the people that manage the grants inside the institution, they understand what the demand is, who's doing what, who's collecting data, how much data they're collecting, how much money are they getting in to do that, and so on. So there's an oversight mechanism there. And then obviously the executive at the university, the vice president for research or DVC research. They all have different perspectives. For researchers, we do need to deal with those fears. We have answers to all of them. We need to convince them there's a culture change coming. They need to understand that their data has value outside of their own project, and they can get credit for it. And that by having their data shared, they get access to other people's shared data. They can do new things. They can discover new data sets. They can make new discoveries, I should say, and they get credit for it. And one of the things is that we came up very strongly is it's very hard to fix the past. It's very easy to fix the future. Don't try and fix all the data you've already got. That'll take time and expertise and other problems. Get going to fix the future. Get ready to bring the new data sets in. By some measures, we're currently collecting as much data every 2 years as we've recorded in all of history. Okay, so just think about those numbers. That curve is going like this. Really important phrase, show, don't tell. This comes up in a whole range of different contexts. You can Google that phrase. It comes up in writing. It comes up in marketing and communications. The show, don't tell thing is give me an example, make it real. Don't tell me data management is great. Don't tell me about the FAIR principles. Yeah, that's great for a group like us. Show me how another researcher that looks like me is doing better because they're sharing data. And we can do that. There are lots of examples of data reuse. The key thing are the champions. What we found in Australia was when we started this conversation, we found a few key people from different disciplines. I can still think of a linguist, an X-ray crystallographer. Who else was there? There was a bioscience, a genetic researcher, and somebody else. There were 4 of them. So when we had the initial meetings around what we're going to do for data management in Australia, we'd get 30, 40 people turning up at a time. Once we had a few champions coming in and we said, oh, we're going to have this workshop and these guys are going to talk about how sharing data changes what they do, we had 200 people. All right? It completely changed the conversation. And suddenly all these researchers went, oh, you can do that. You can do this. You can change things. That was really powerful. You don't need a lot of people. You know, we talked about having 1 or 2 per discipline. In fact, we didn't even need that. We needed somebody from a discipline that was close enough to what a researcher is. So we needed somebody from the physical sciences, from the humanities, from the biosciences, from the health sector. And pretty much every researcher in the world can relate to some of those disciplines, and they can understand how this maps across. I should mention, you're not alone. There are other disciplines, there are other institutions, there are other governments doing this. Again, you can show that as an example. And ultimately, the International Research Data Alliance came out of this because we had the governments, the funding and policy people from Australia, European Union, the US and the UK got together and said, why are we standardizing everything in Australia? Australian researchers collaborate globally. Researchers around the world collaborate globally. So why would we use Australian standards? Let's make sure we all globally agree. So the Research Data Alliance was set up to help with that. Is it a lot of discussions? Yes, it is. That's okay. We need to convince people. It takes time. We need something to point towards. We need that vision. And that was one of the reasons why in a very early meeting of this working group, I said, well, why don't we put something forward that has a name, like the Open Data Commons or something like that. And we need some simple marketing for it. So we talked about, and the slides I'm just going to provide for reference, but the idea of an Asia-Pacific Open Data Commons, it's just a name, but it gives you a set of concepts you can attach to. And when you talk to a researcher, you can say, you can be part of this. When you talk to a government body, you can say, this is what we're aiming towards. When you talk to a funder, you can say, these are going to be the outcomes. They each understand those things from different perspectives. Again, I'm just going to finish on those 3 pillars, and I'll remind you again, culture is what starts everything. And there I'm going to stop, and I apologize for taking too long.